Welcome to the Chess Angle. This is not your typical chess podcast. If you're an amateur or club-level player, the Chess Angle is for you. Our content is aimed at busy adults who are serious about the game but have limited study time. Featured guests include both amateur and titled players alike. And now, here's your host, Director of the Long Island Chess Club, Neil Bellon.
Welcome, everybody. I'm going to jump right in. I'm here with my friend, Stefan Wefer. He is an improver, a fellow amateur player, a Long Island Chess Club regular, and a fellow school teacher, has his Ph.D. Great guy. We're going to talk about his story and chess and improvement and the whole deal. So, Stefan, good to see you, and thanks for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Neil. I just want to say I enjoy playing in your club, and I think you're doing a great job there. And I'm glad to see that you have a podcast rolling. I've listened to your podcast while I go out, like for runs and everything like that, in my earphones, and it keeps the long runs going. And I really enjoy it.
I appreciate that. Thanks. Let's jump right in. So you're a fellow teacher. So this episode is going to be for all the teachers out there, not the chess teachers, like the teachers who are in the schools working with kids. This one's for you. All right. So we have two teachers here. I know we have a lot of teachers who listen and play. So you're teaching, correct me if I'm wrong, Stefan, high school science. You teach AP biology. Is that correct?
Yeah, I teach AP biology. I teach living environment, which is kind of like the fancy way of saying biology. And I also teach genetics on occasion. So that's my high school days. When I was younger and I had more energy, I would teach adjunct at community college and also Stony Brook. But right now I'm focusing just on teaching high school.
All right. Now, is college something that you would want to go back into later on, or are you kind of done with that?
Yeah, I think that maybe when I retire, I'll do it as like a part-time thing. But right now, you got to. I mean, right now with the whole, I have a family, and I enjoy like when I do any kind of extra work, like doing adjunct work, that is, it takes away from the family. So now that I have 3 kids, and I like to go to their like games and events and be home for dinner. You know what I mean? But when I was young and we needed money, I would basically work 2 jobs just to when you're young and you got energy, that kind of thing. But yeah, certainly when I retire, I'd go back to teaching adjunct. All
right, cool. Yeah, no, family's definitely number one. So at your high school position, you're running the chess club there and a chess team. So tell us a little bit about that.
So it started maybe like 10 years ago. We had an interest in playing chess. So I started the club, and we had a really good group of kids that came in, and it grew bigger and bigger and bigger to the point where I couldn't fit them in my classroom anymore. We call it like a little theater, where it holds like 100 people, and we had like 70 people in our chess club. And I have a small percentage of those kids. Usually it's just a hangout. They come and they play chess and they enjoy. And I only say, you don't have to know how to play chess to join the chess club, because we teach them things like that. And then what happens is that COVID hit, and then our numbers basically like dropped to zero. We tried running the chess club like virtually through like chess.com and things like that, but it didn't have that social aspect. So now after COVID, this is the first year that we're like up and running without masks, and we're again back up to 69, 70 people, and it's pretty popular. So I enjoy doing it, and I think people think of me as like a chess coach. It's not like I sit there and give instruction to a class like you would think of like a chess class, like a chess teacher showing everybody how to do something. I just like welcome whoever wants to play chess, and if kids want to learn, I'll show a couple of kids how to play chess or go over some strategies with a couple of kids. But it's not like people think of chess coach, they think of I have given speeches before before like big tournaments and stuff like that, but it's not like we have like practice or anything like that. So I look at it more as a club than like a team.
Right. No, I understand. The kids probably love that too. So you have your Ph.D. in biology. Is that correct?
Actually, my Ph.D. is in science education. So what happened was I started going for a lot of education classes, and I got really interested in how people learn. So I got my PhD. I know most people get their PhD in, most people get their advanced degree as an EDD when they talk about like an educational like doctorate. But in my particular case, my thesis was focused more on a topic in biology called bioinformatics, in which and before becoming a teacher, I was actually working in a lab at Stony Brook before I figured out exactly what I wanted to do with my life. So the bioinformatics is basically taking genetic information or biological data and sorting through it. People write programs to analyze it. I almost like to think of it as like nowadays you could search for like a piece of a lyric of a song and then you get the whole thing. You could, and then it's right in front of you. You could do whatever you want with it. It's basically the same idea with biological information. It's like a huge, like growing, it's like the fastest growing field in biology. So I want to do more of like a research project with that and sort of incorporate like lessons in that. So when I was at Columbia, it was the school was a teachers' college. You probably heard of it being in the field, and they kind of put me in the College of Arts and Science because it was more of a research, taking less classes and more of a in-depth research project where I did both like qualitative and quantitative like aspects. So the degree, I guess my degree is from the College of Arts and Science, but it's a PhD, but it's in the field of education, which is kind of like confusing. It's kind of confusing to explain to people because a lot of people do have like an EDD when they get their doctorate in education.
Well, it's funny. As you know, I don't really talk about this that much. I'm going for my EDD now, and I'm finding the opposite. Like nobody outside of education has like heard what it is.
Right.
Everyone's like, oh, is that like a PhD? And then I go on to explain that it's different. I mean, I don't get into the whole thing because a lot of old school, you probably know this, a lot of old school stodgy PhDs, they think that like the EDD is like a lesser degree. And, you know, there's that. I'm not going to get into that argument now.
Right. Yeah. It's far from it. It's just a matter of how you focus.
And the whole thing is the argument, the traditional sort of explanation was that, well, a PhD is more about teaching college and doing research. And if you're an EDD, that's more about being a practitioner. That was true in like 1993, but yet that definition still exists, but there's a blurring of the two. In other words, you have quite a number of scholars with an EDD who are teaching college and doing research. And you have PhD scholars who are, you know, doing that also, but they're also in the schools as well. So there's like a blurring. I mean, even at many major universities, a lot of the staff are EDDs. And I'm talking, you know, in the education department and like the social sciences. I'm not speaking just about the degree in general, but there is kind of a blurring of the two. And as far as the program itself, it's very similar because when I was researching getting my doctorate, like the EDD program I'm in now, as far as the rigor and the requirements and the dissertation, it's pretty much the same. But there's still that school of thought that, you know, the EDD is like a fake doctorate or something like that. But, you know, I won't get into that now. But yeah, I know what you're saying. But it's, you know, people separate the PhD and the EDD, and I know some people are going to disagree, but there are some similarities. But it really depends on the field that you're talking about, I guess. So, you know, you were saying that about the PhD, you know, for the EDD.
Right.
When I tell people if it comes up, they're like confused by it. Even people in education aren't sure what it is. I mean, everybody knows what a PhD is.
Yeah. And actually, when I was going to school, I actually had a choice on did I want to do more of an in-depth project, research-based project, or go the EDD route when I was actually applying. And it actually fit in for me even better because number one, I coming from a science background, I really like the idea of spending more time doing research than taking extra classes. And it actually traveling to the city. I live in Long Island. For me, I live out east on Long Island, so it was a pretty big commute for me. So I would have to take less classes. And basically do I basically did my research project from my school.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that That must have been like traveling from Long Island, taking the train to Columbia. Like what was that like? That must have been beyond exhausting.
Yeah, I mean that was years ago when I have three boys, as I mentioned, and my first kid was like maybe like 3. So it was kind of like I was under the personal time pressure of I had to get this done before my family starts growing, my kids get older, and believe it or not, it was hard work. Don't get me wrong, but taking people think of the commute as a bad thing. Is actually a good thing because what happened was I would take the Long Island Railroad. Uh, I'd I'd go in after work, and on the way there, I'd be doing my reading, working on my thesis. I basically burned the battery of my laptop, charged it while I was there, and then on the way home, I would do my assignments that they assigned, like read this chapter, do this, do that, and I would do it on the way home. And this way, basically for me, it was like an hour and 45-minute commute each way. I'd get home at like maybe 1:30 in the morning, and I would do that like a few times a week. And I guess we're made to have energy when we're young, because if you ask me to do that now, there's no way I could do that.
Yeah, you and me both. I couldn't do it now. I mean, I'm going for it now. The thing with me, I'm going for my doctorate as someone who's a little bit quote unquote older. Like my cohort has a very wide range, although there's a number of people in like my age range as well. But when I was in my 20s and 30s, if you had mentioned going for my doctorate, I was like, no, because again, I'm a music teacher. Back then, it was just a different thing. I was doing a lot of gigs. I was doing a lot of playing outside, like academia, and going for my doctorate was the furthest thing from my mind. But you have to go when it's ready for you. Interesting. So speaking of teaching and having your doctorate and your career, how do you juggle your family life, work, studying and playing chess? That's really a big theme with this podcast, is just being sort of an adult improver and having all these other responsibilities, but yet still being serious about improving. Just curious what your story or your sort of method or your, any tricks you have about balancing all of that.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say that I started playing chess when I was younger, maybe in like junior high or something like that. And listeners may know of Ed Walensky. He was a chess. I don't know if you know Ed Walensky. He was my chess club advisor when I was in junior high.
That rings a bell. Not offhand. I've heard that name thrown around, but I don't know him personally.
So he was like a local like chess like guy at the scene, in the chess scene, like in the 80s or what have you. And I basically learned chess with him, and we this was going back in the 80s, and we learned descriptive we talked about descriptive notation, things like that. And I use that as an example of it was a long time ago, right? So I really didn't know like how to study back then, other than just like learning and playing with people, like, as a kid. Like what kid I mean, I'm not saying kids don't read books, but what kid is going to sit down and read a book? And we didn't have the internet back then. And just as an aside, I noticed that as like a chess like coach advisor now, the kids that immerse themselves into like watching videos, reading books, everything, those are the kids that really like improve, right? So I would say I was rated about anywhere from 1,000 to like 1,200. Then what happened was high school came, and I actually got in. Unfortunately, you couldn't be in a club and you couldn't do a sport at the same time. I happened to be a pretty decent runner, so I actually was in the cross country track team and did that through high school and college. And then what happened was when I was done with college, I played in. I decided to get back into chess a little bit, and I played in one tournament. It was one of these continental chess events. And I just got like destroyed by I didn't even have a rating. So I think they used my original rating. They had to look it up in a book, and my rating was like 1,200. And I played and I got like destroyed. And my rating dropped to maybe like 1,100 or something like that. So I was like, all right, now it's time to study. And I remember picking up a Jeremy Silman book, and I started reading about the like value of pieces, where he was talking about the bishops, liking open. I'll never forget. I was reading this, and it was like a revelation to me. It was like bishops like open situations, and knights work better closed. And it's talking about the controlling of squares. And I remember being like, "Oh my god, I never really like considered this before." So then I started getting better, and I was playing on. They didn't even have chess.com. They had Yahoo Chess. Did you ever play Yahoo Chess?
Oh yeah, I remember those days. Yep. I'm just laughing. Yahoo Chess.
And I know that ICC was just coming out too then, but I play some games in Yahoo Chess, and I was actually getting better then. But then I decided to go for my doctorate while I was still young, and then what happened was chess stood on the back burner. So I didn't really actually start taking improving seriously until maybe when I started joining your club. I guess it was like 6 years ago or something like that, 7 years ago. I think it was maybe like 2013, maybe 2015. I don't know. So then I started like really getting into it, reading books, stuff like that, looking online. More resources became available, things like that. So I would say that I pretty much spent most of my like chess interest of my life not really spending any time studying. And then when I started studying recently, this was after my Ph.D. and everything. You may think, okay, now I have a family. How do I get the studying in? Well, I try to find, instead of like using my free time of like back then, I was like I said, I was on the train writing a paper, stuff like that for my classes. I'll wake up and now I feel like I could relax in the morning now that my kids are getting older. My three boys are 18, 16, and 13. So they're pretty much self-sufficient. So now I could wake up in the morning. I don't have to change diapers. I can do some tactics problems, something like that. So I always like to do tactics problems when I have free time, as far as maybe if I'm at a sporting event, like if my kid was in football, I'm on the sideline, I'd be watching him practice. Not during a game, but during practice. I got to sit there for practice. I have a Kindle and I'll like read a chess book, or I'll play some chess games, things like that. I've been reading more books now, and I honestly feel like every book that I read and immerse myself in, I do that next like rating jump, so to speak. So whenever I feel like a little like stagnated, I'll pick up a new book and I'll immerse myself in, and sure enough, I see results soon thereafter. I think that consistency would be like my downfall, where it's something that you have to keep on top of. And I always notice that it's like working out. When you get in shape, you're going to perform well. And if you're out of shape, you're not going to perform well. So I would say advice to people that are busy is it doesn't have to be like it doesn't have to be where you spend like hours and hours upon day in a set like time in the day where you got to devote like 3 hours. I think that if you do like 15 minutes in the morning of tactics, or if you take it, I only play like a few games of chess.com online a week. But when I do, I'll make it an effort to try to take it seriously, because I've noticed that when I don't take it seriously, it's fun, but things happen. If, for example, one of the biggest problems is that if I playing a game, something will distract me. Like all of a sudden, oh, the sink is leaking, or the toilet's clogged, or hey, Dad, I need help studying for my test, or something like that. Like there's always something that comes up, or something ridiculous like this has happened, or I'm in the middle of a game and a tree falls down in a rainstorm. And you hear I'm like, what the heck is that? And I get up, and then all of a sudden the game is like lost. You know what I mean? I mean, I get distracted pretty easily. That's besides the point. But yeah, I don't know if I'm just rambling on here. I don't know if that answers your question or what have you. But my advice is to if people are busy, try to take little pieces of time throughout the whole day, and it might add up. Like I use my Kindle or a phone or a video, and I find little things where maybe if I have to be sitting in the doctor's office, for example, I'll do some tactics problems, that kind of thing, or read a section of a book.
I don't think that was rambling at all. That was like a treatise on how to improve as a busy adult with a family. And I agree, it's not so much the hours and hours, but more of the consistency and what you talk about, like while you're watching your kids practice, or maybe you're waiting for your child's piano lesson, whatever it is, 10 minutes here, 15 minutes here, 20 minutes here, that all adds up. So I think that's very, very well said.
And I also would add one thing to that. Now that my kids get older, you might be saying, well, don't your kids play chess, right? So when they were younger, I got them all into chess and took them to chess tournaments, and figured that would be a good way we could all learn together and improve. They would get it. Would be like I had these visions of the whole family going to a chess tournament, right? That would be awesome, right? But it goes with anything. It's like the kids are going to find what they want to do and what they're interested in. Probably the person who's most into chess, who like, and it's more of he likes hanging out with me, is my youngest, my 13-year-old. So he comes to the chess. He has gone to a couple of these like chess tournaments, like at Continental Chess, like at the hotels or whatever. The only thing there is that I think it's discouraging sometimes if you're not really immersed in a chess program or anything, because what happens is he joined a chess club at his school, and he's got this confidence with Ashton, my 13-year-old. He's because he plays chess with me, he knows more chess than the average kid who's not immersed in the chess. So everybody's like, oh my goodness, look how good he is in chess. He's like mopping everybody up. And then I take him to a tournament, and you have these kids that they got chess coaches, they got everything, and he'll lose every single game and he'll get discouraged. So I think that like at the chess tournaments, his rating is like, you're really playing against other kids that are so much better than they really are. And as a result, his rating is like literally like 150. Like, did you ever hear of a rate? I didn't know it could get that low, but online when he plays casual people, he's like rated 1,000. You know what I mean? And I play. We used to say when we were younger, oh, they're rated 800, but 800 now is pretty tough, especially when you're a kid.
Yep, we were talking about that the other day. I was listening to something else where they were talking about that. Yeah, there's definitely some rating deflation. And the thing is with the kids, as you just said, their ratings aren't caught up to their strength. So it's like you said, they're listed as quote unquote 800, quote unquote 1,000, but they're really like 15 or 1,600. And the truth is, with all the resources and the online stuff now, they're getting good so fast. And of course, at their age, I mean, you know this with your Ph.D., it's the brain and, elasticity, plasticity, all that stuff. At that age, they're absorbing stuff like a sponge. We both know that as educators.
But the point I'm trying to make is that it could be a little discouraging for some kids that aren't completely immersed, like in a chess training program or something like that. So I see that with my kids. Like I tried for them to catch the chess bug. I think really has to come from within. You know what I mean? And then it takes over.
Yeah, but it's like you said, a lot of those kids at these major tournaments, it's like really, really, really hardcore. So let's move on to something that I find very interesting. You are really into collecting chess sets, and you're turning this into like a thing, and you have a YouTube channel. Tell us about this whole thing.
Yeah, so I've always had an appreciation for like really like awesome looking like chess sets. Even like when I was younger, I used to like. I don't know if you remember, like when you were a kid, you could look at like a toy or something like that, like hold it in your hand, and you like look at it, and you're like, oh, cool. I remember like certain like if I was holding like chess pieces, I'm like, oh wow, look how cool this is like shaped. So I was always into like. As I get older, I was able to start collecting more wherever I go. If I go to any country, I'm always on the lookout for like a chess set that looks unique. So like when we took the family, we went on a cruise through the Mediterranean. I found a really cool chess set in like Greece. And then when we went to Egypt a couple of years ago, I had found a good looking chess set. So I've been accumulating over the years, and I'm always looking at like a garage sale. I'll pull in at a yard sale and I'll just stop in for one purpose. Do you have any chess sets? And you'd be surprised that people actually are like practically giving away for like $5, like these really nice chess sets. Like I had picked up, people might know like the Druicki chess pieces that are, highly sought after. I picked up at a yard sale for like $20, and they're like rare chess pieces. So it turned into like a really nice hobby to do, where I started talking with people on a Facebook page, chess collecting Facebook page, and we share our chess pieces, things like that, chess sets. So what I decided to do was, it's actually in its infancy. It's only like a week or two old, since I like talking about collecting chess, not just like chess pieces, chess books, chess tables, this kind of thing. I decided to start a vlog where I would kind of like a show and tell, where I would show like of chess pieces that I found. So I have some exciting things lined up for that. For example, I'm going to be doing sort of like not a podcast, but more of like a video show and tell of a chess collector in Germany. Holger Langer is going to meet with me shortly to basically show me his chess, talk about his chess collection, things like that. So I'll be putting all that content out there soon, and I'm pretty optimistic it's going to make a social presence. But right now, like I said, it's it's spawning as we speak.
Sounds very cool. All right, and we'll put links for all that stuff in the show notes if anyone's interested in keeping up with that.
Yeah. So the name of the YouTube channel is Cool Chess Stuff with Stefan. Okay.
Cool Chess Stuff with Stefan. All right. I'll have to check that out. Cool. Yeah, no, a lot of people, admittedly, I'm not too much into the memorabilia and collecting stuff, but I know a lot of people are really, really into that.
Yeah, and I just also want to add in that you've probably seen me come to your chess club with different types of boards. Like I always feel like I would love to experience the board that or pieces and playing on a nice set. And one thing I have to say I really enjoy about your club is the relaxed atmosphere. It's not like this intimidating tournament hall. It's not like you're playing with strangers that you don't know. We're all friends there for the most part, and it's such a relaxed, enjoyable atmosphere, and everybody feels so comfortable to around each other that I feel comfortable enough bringing a nice chess set to play on. And you've seen me there with the red pieces. The people have commented, "Oh, I can't play on red pieces," and I giggle to myself. And then I played Dan Levin, who was on your podcast before. We played one time on a chess set from the Sinkfield Cup. It actually had a certificate of authenticity where the players signed the paper. It was like 2018 Sinkfield Cup. So we played on that really nice set. And Dan had mentioned to me after, "Oh, when are we going to play on the Sinkfield Cup again?" And it was kind of cool to play a tournament game just in a relaxed atmosphere. I mean, as relaxed as a tournament game could be, but we were playing on a cool set. I thought it just add to the experience. The only bad experience I had that I brought a pretty nice wooden chess set to your club, and I always see who I'm going to play first before I pull it out of my car, because I was playing this kid. I don't know, it was like maybe he's 8-year-old, and kids will be kids, and like I mentioned before, like things sometimes could throw me off if I get distracted. And this kid was taking the piece and he was banging it on the table. It was like boom, 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 boom on the table. And I understand kids. Kids will be kids. But in my mind, I was like, stop. I'm like, stop banging the pieces, buddy. I'm like, that's a nice set.
Did you call him out? Wait, did you tell him?
No, I mean, he stopped eventually, but I didn't want to be like rude. You know what I mean?
Did you call me? Because I would have shut that down fast. Did you call me over?
No. It was like, it wasn't like a recurring thing. You know what I mean? It was just like, I stopped, but then I was like, and you know what? I learned my lesson. I'm like, if I'm going to play a kid, it's fine. I'm not going to use one of my nice chess sets. I just leave in the car, bring out the plastic pieces.
No, right. But you got to, I mean, listen, you have, even if it's a child, you have every right to say something.
Yeah, it's one of those things I don't think you realize, you know what I mean? And I know kids, if you tell a kid not to do it, he might do it again because he's not even thinking about it. It was almost like he was doing it while he was thinking, not even realizing.
Oh, all right. I would have taken care of that for
Well,
you.
thank you.
But anyway, well, no, because like people say, like, and this drives me crazy both as a TD and a player, whereas, oh, I lost this game because this kid wouldn't sit still. I lost this game because this kid, he kept doing this. And I'm saying, why were you sitting through this for an entire game? Like, say something to the TD. So, well, did you win the game?
No, I didn't.
Oh, you didn't? Okay. All right.
Normally, I have a pretty good track record against kids. I like people always say, "Do you hate playing kids?" I don't hate it at all. I know that I've heard people mention before, just in conversations, that people don't want to play younger kids because of the notion that they are, way better than they are. They're improving, but for some reason, I actually have a pretty good track record. Against kids, so it isn't really like bothering me that they were a kid. It bothered me that it could have been anyone. It could have been you, but you wouldn't you wouldn't be banging my chess pieces. I would have said something to you.
Right. Yeah, no, I hope not. Well, yeah, the thing with kids, I don't mind playing. I'll admit, it used to bother me. Like if I was paired against, it was like, oh God, I don't want to play a 6-year-old. Now it doesn't. Now it doesn't. What does bother me though, I admit this, is if someone has a rating of quote unquote 1,000, but they're playing like they're 1,700.
Right.
Like that does get frustrating, and you really have to discipline yourself, because if you let that take over your head during the game, you're going to make a mistake.
Right.
Like, and you should be focusing on the game and not thinking, oh, this is ridiculous. 800, he's really playing, but it's frustrating because, if you lose or draw the game, your rating's going to take a big hit, but that's just how it is. That's just how it is.
Yeah.
So nothing you can do. All right. So let's move on. Good stuff. Now, you submitted a game with your analysis to Chess Life. This is back in July of 2018, and it was published in Lev Albert's column Back to Basics, which, of course, got canceled, or I think it was retired a couple of years ago. Of course, for me, that was my favorite column in Chess Life. That was the first thing I turned to. I know a lot of other amateurs said the same thing. And basically, for those of you who are not familiar, Grandmaster Lev Albert had a column where anyone rated, I think it was below 18 or maybe below 1,700, you could submit a game that you played with your own annotations, and he would publish that and then put his own comments in italics. And so he would basically analyze an amateur game, and the person submitting it would have his or her annotations as well. But it was very, very instructive because it was a game from a fellow amateur. So you could really follow it and absorb it. And in some ways, studying amateur games can be more instructive or more useful than studying grandmaster games. That's just my take, or at least it can be more instructive. And so you submitted this game, but your notes are very, very detailed. It's called the Botvinnik experiment. So tell us a little bit about that game.
All right. So first of all, I always look at chess improvement as the way that I look at the coming from a experience from an educational perspective. I always look at chess improvement of, you're going to improve at anything if it comes from within. And anybody who's listening, they're probably going to, everybody can relate to this, I think. They think back to when you were in school. You probably learned a topic best or a concept best when you created something. Maybe you did a research project or something, or maybe you did a research paper on something, or maybe you did a science experiment where you discovered something, right? And then you have to synthesize the information and put it down, write it. When you write something, you're basically testing yourself. What do I really know? What should I find more about? And then when it's all done, you're pretty much an expert on the topic. At least in your mind, right? So I mean, you could relate, Neil, to like your classes, right? You could probably think that even down to your thesis, whatever you. I'm sorry, I never asked what your thesis was, or if it changed. You're pretty much going to be know that really, really well. You'll probably know that with a PhD or EDD, you're going to know your topic as one of the best in the field. So one thing I try to do when I analyze my games is I try to write down what I think is going on, and maybe making connections. If you can make connections to something that's meaningful to you, you're going to hold on to it that much more for the rest of your life. So what I did was one of my favorite chess players that I like reading about is Botvinnik, right? I like the sort of like the methodical scientific approach where he develops his pieces and then all of a sudden it could like explode. And I was reading in one of his books. Have you read Tal Botvinnik 1960 book, the Tournament series?
I have not.
That's a great book. It's almost like I have it right here actually. It's almost as if Tal is like, well, what do you think is going to happen next? It's very descriptive, and in that book he goes over a game, and I also saw that it was the Avro 1937 game he referenced in there, and then I started looking at a book that I have of Kasparov's series, where it's the Red Book of series, that series of red books where it's My Great Predecessors. You know that line of books, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So I actually collected those just so I have the volume, and I have to admit I haven't read it. I haven't read the series cover to cover, but it's a great reference book because it's almost like if you look at it, for example, a games that somebody's talking about, it's very probable it's in there, and you go and see what they're talking about, like what Kasparov wrote about it, and it's detailed. So I started looking at this, and I was like, this is actually like a cool plan. And then when I was in my game, I sort of had a similar plan to it. So I was trying to draw the connection between my game and the game from the Avro tournament. And this pawn structure and the development of the pieces actually turned out to be similar, and following through the plan was a similar plan. I'm not saying it was the same exact game, but trying to make the connections between them actually was the learning process for me. And then I understood it so much better. So it was kind of like a learning exercise, and I submitted it, and I didn't even know that I won. They didn't even tell me. It was Dan Levin that posted on your Facebook page, "Congratulations to Stefan Wefer for the recipient of Lev Albert's contest." And I was like, I didn't even know I won. And then all of a sudden the book came in the mail. I was like, cool.
Oh, that's awesome. Now, yeah, they've retired the column, or he retired. I'm not sure of the reason they canceled it. Maybe Lev Albert was done. I don't know, but Lev Albert's still around, right?
Yeah, I think he is.
He's still with us, right? Okay. Okay. I guess he just retired from doing the column, but there was a blurb in Chess Life, the recent edition, saying that something is going to be coming to replace it, or they hinted at it. So I don't know if they're replacing that column.
Okay.
Or if they're going to have something. Yeah. If they're going to have something similar. I did enjoy it. That's usually the first thing I turn to. Let's talk a little bit about openings.
Okay, sure.
And your opening philosophy. I don't know if you're more like me, where you kind of have your set repertoire and you stick to it. And there are pros and cons of that. The pros is that you're going to get positions you're familiar with, and you're generally going to play them really well because you're consistent. But of course, the downside is that your opponents know what's coming and they can try to prepare something. So I'm just curious, but the thing is, even strong titled players have a set repertoire. I mean, this is the example I always use. Look at Fischer, right? Always opened with E4, very rarely played D4. And as black, it was pretty much the Najdorf Sicilian against E4 and the King's Indian against D4. And he very rarely strayed from that. And this is Fischer. So just a little bit of an example there. but other people like to mix it up. I'm just curious, what your take is, if you're kind of sticking to the same thing or if you like to bounce around a little bit.
My take on that is believe it or not, I like to do both. I like to stick around, and then I also like to change it up. So when I was a kid, I was an E4 player. And I sort of there was no really set repertoire. I kind of I just played like logically, like get the pieces out. I was a kid and just followed the rules of what was supposed to work. Then what happened was I switched over to D4 as when I returned to chess in maybe like 2012, 2013, when I was rated like 11, 1200 at the time. So I played that for a while, and then I graduated. And then when I joined your club, I actually got better. I got up to like 1500. And then I got stagnated around 1500. And then I decided to change it up a little bit. And one thing that I changed it up was I played the Caro-Kann for many, many years as black. So for against E4. Then it dawned on me that a lot of the positions that I get in the Caro-Kann, eventually I would push C6 and then C5 eventually. So I said, why not just go to C5 anyway? So then I started looking into playing like a Sicilian, and I watched this video with Yasser Sarouan, who, by the way, I think is a wonderful teacher. I've learned a lot from him online. I'm playing the Dragon. So when I did that, I actually immersed myself in learning about playing the Dragon or accelerated Dragon. And after that, I went from like 1500 and jumped up to 1600 for the first time. And then slowly improved. So then I decided to look into more of the accelerated Dragon, and I got the Ginji Hashivili and Lev Albert's book on. I believe it's called it's like Opening Repertoire for Black, and it actually worked really, really well for me, to the point where there's like a lot of like traps and stuff like that. And I know that people are a fan of like don't play the main line, things like that. I would play like a main line, but something sharp. If someone deviates from the main line, I noticed that you can get them in something tactical. So it's like a lot of tactical things in there that you can do. So my rating went up a little bit there. So then what I did was since I liked their openings for black, then I bought the book Openings for White. So they had a repertoire book, Openings for White. So then I said, well, since this group of authors did good for me, I'm going to try their Opening for White, which is basically E4. So then I went back to E4 and I improved, and I actually had a couple of good games against like 17,800 players in your club a few years ago. And then again, I got stagnant, and my goal was to get over 1,700. So what I did was I decided to do a major change in something that I'd never played before, and I switched over to the English. And when I immersed myself into the English opening, then that's why I made my jump to like I got up to 1750s. And recently I was looking at like I don't play a lot of chess. I just, as far as tournament, I've come to your club a lot, but then for one reason or another with family, I haven't been there in a few weeks now. So as a result, I'm out of shape and I dropped a little bit. But studying the openings and keeping up with my chess, I was able to beat some really good players. I drew Tim Mirable, which was probably one of my best games. Playing the English, and for me, I mean, it's different from everybody. I know, Neil, that you like to play your London system and you like to play your French defense, but for me, I like to stick with something for a while and really, really learn it and move on. It's particularly when I feel stagnant, because I have this feeling that the mind actually works a lot like, I know many people will disagree with me. It works a lot like almost like your body, where if you exercise, you're going to see big improvements pretty quick right away. But then what happens is you'll hear a lot of like I'm into running all sorts of exercise. I believe that it has a tremendous benefit to like mental cognition in many areas, but that's besides the point. But when we talk about exercise, people reach these stagnant points of strength improvement. And they always say in all of the health books and the journals and the advice by the professional trainers to mix up your workouts, to try something different. And that basically shocks your body. And then you reach that next level of strength. And for me, I've noticed that in my chess, when I mix it up and kind of like shock my body into something new, that's when I reach the next level. So I go to the next level improvement. It's almost like I hit that next level. And there's been like theories in this idea of doing something different than what you're used to. And I'll give you a couple quick examples. One example is a field in neurobiology called neurobics, where something as simple as like brushing your teeth with your left hand, if you always brush it with your right hand, or you may have heard like learning to juggle makes you more creative or think more creatively in other areas. And juggling has nothing to do with the brain, but your coordination, your nervous system is learning something different. As an overall, you're going to think more critically, right? So I look at that all on the same line of like learning, where if I feel stagnated and I try something new, it basically forces me to not only like work harder, but reach that next level, so to speak. I don't know if that makes sense.
Makes a lot of sense. Very, very well said. Very interesting. Just kind of, improving from within and mixing it up.
And I actually thought about this also. I'm always thinking about the way that people learn, being in the field, and how to get my students to learn in like the science class, how to get people engaged. And one thing, if you're challenging yourself in ways that like really causes you to think outside of your own box, you're gonna start thinking a lot more critically. And one thing that comes to mind was not your podcast, but there's a podcast, Perpetual Chess, with Ben Johnson. I don't know if you heard that. I remember I was listening.
Yeah,
right.
I've heard of it.
Okay.
Yes.
So sorry. So I remember I was listening to one guest he had, Cyrus Lactawala, and
sure.
and he asked him the question. He says, "What do you think is going to have your students improve the most?" And Cyrus's comment was that for some reason he sees end games. When all of a sudden they do end game puzzles, his students, like, he sees an improvement. And I asked myself, is it the end game puzzles, or is it the struggle of trying something new that you haven't done before? So that to me resonated, where maybe it's trying something new outside of your own personal box that gets you to think more critically and maybe reach that next level of not just understanding, but just the way that your brain thinks.
Yeah, see, that's your PH mind at work, looking for the deeper meaning, like questioning results. Like he said, I'm showing my students endgame puzzles, and you're thinking, well, is it that you're showing them endgame puzzles, or is it that you're showing them something new that they didn't learn before?
Right.
See, that's your academic background at work. There, very, very, very interesting. All right. Now, you spoke about this a little bit. At this point, do you have rating goals? Is it just, you just generally want to get better? Is it, I want to reach X rating by this point? Or are you not thinking about it? You just want to play and enjoy it?
Well, first of all, I enjoy playing at all levels, whether it's blitz or casual or in a tournament. I just love the game of chess. But of course, I have goals. I'm a competitive person. Whether it's training for a 5K and trying to like get my best old man time, so to speak. I'm always trying to reach the next goal in chess. My immediate goal, or my short-term goal, is to get over 1,800, and then my long-term goal is to reach over 2,000, the expert. Now I've heard people argue, like, I'm 47 years old, like how, like, maybe because you're older, your chess improvement may not be there. And I kind of disagree with that because I think that, for one, there's ways that you can improve your. I think that the biggest downfall for people of like our age is their stamina over the board, where maybe they're going to be like get tired or make a silly mistake or things like that. I think that tactically I'm sharper than I've ever been. My tactics rating on like chess.com always, it goes up and down, but it always goes up. So I know that tactically I'm getting better. But as far as like stamina over the board, well, that's one reason why I keep up with my exercise. I feel like I have more stamina, especially after a day of work. I mean, we're all tired there. We all worked a full day, and that's part of it. I mean, most of us are like that. So it's kind of like, I don't want to use that as an excuse, but I feel that it gives me an edge as far as like stamina, as far as like keeping up with my exercise, that kind of stuff. But yeah, I definitely feel like I'm going to improve more, even though I'm an older a dinosaur, so to speak.
We're about the same age. So my own belief, the whole idea that, well, as you get older, you can't improve as much, that's a bunch of nonsense. The reason is, I think as we get older, it's not that you can't get better. It's that you have more responsibility, right? You can't put the time in. You can't play in as many tournaments. You can't study as much. And so improvement is slower. But people just say, oh, it's because my brain doesn't work as well. No, it's because when you're younger, or you're like 20 years old and you're still living at home and you don't have a family and, you can spend all these hours. But as you get older, you have more responsibility. That's why the growth is more difficult, because you just can't put the time in. I'm not so sure that it's because obviously your mind is quicker when you're younger, but I think what I'm saying is, I think the idea that, well, you can only get so much better, if you're 45 years old and you're trying to improve, your improvement's going to be limited. I think that's greatly exaggerated. I don't think that's as true as people make it out to be. You can certainly get better. I mean, is it, who is it, Anand? He's like in his 50s and he's still playing tournaments competitively and stuff and doing well.
Whenever I watch these tournaments, I always go for the old people. So I'm an Anand fan.
Age is just a number. I mean, you don't feel your age, right?
I feel younger than ever.
Yeah, so do I. I'm 51. I feel like I'm 25. I feel good. Nothing hurts. I feel great, bopping around. You said you're 47. You look younger. You're in good shape. It's all in your head.
Well, they actually did. They actually did studies. I don't know if you ever read. They have these. Joe Dispenza has these books, The Placebo Effect, and everything like that. I don't know if you've heard of him. He's a really well-known author. They've actually done studies that he's mentioned where people actually pretend they're younger and do things as if they're younger, and then they've done studies where their blood pressure goes down and their health improves, their cholesterol drops, and they didn't even change. They didn't change their eating habits. They just by thinking they were younger.
Absolutely, no, it's all in your head. All right, so I want to ask you about something. This is a little bit of a right turn. I noticed you wear headphones during your game.
Yes.
So what's that all about? I'm just curious. I know you're not getting the moves from a chess computer. I know we don't have another cheating scandal on our hands, but do you have like music or white noise? Like,
yeah, so I listen to like relaxing music. I would almost draw the analogy of if you're doing like work or like studying or something like that, people play music in the background to help you relax. It also tunes out the outside noise. So I would say that one of my biggest like weaknesses just like in life is that I can get distracted like really easily, because if I'm looking at a chessboard and I'm immersed in the game, all of a sudden something happens. Now I'm concentrating on something else, and I come back to the chessboard and all of a sudden I do like a stupid blunder or something like that. So what I do is I just use it to like tune out my environment, get really focused on the game, get nice and relaxed. Only one time, this is funny, only one time it actually worked against me, because I was playing, who was I playing? I was playing John Schenkel, right? So he actually I was playing a game with him, I was beating him, and I was listening to my music, and my volume for some reason went down, and I tried to change my volume on the side, I spammed the side of my phone, which is because Bluetooth, because I keep my phone on the table, just so I'm listening to my earphones. I keep my phone on the table. We have a relaxed club. I know some tournament directors don't even want you to have the cell phone, but we're relaxed there. I keep it on the table just so nobody knows that I'm bringing it to the bathroom or anything like that. I leave it on the table. So I spam the side, and it actually does an emergency call to the police. And I'm like, oh, geez. So I hang that up, and then it makes this, I don't know if you remember, it made this siren sound. And then they called me back. They tried calling me back, the police. And I was completely flustered. Like, I just made an emergency phone call to the police, and it was like Garden City Police. I was like, crap. So I just hung up on them, and I blundered the whole game, even though I was like winning. I was up the exchange, and I just blundered it.
Oh, geez. That, you know what? It happens. It happens.
Yeah, I mean, it happens, but I'm just saying that's the only time it worked against me. The time that it helped me out was a few instances when there have been like debacles of like people are like, oh, didn't you hear the argument between these two players over something happened with touch move or draw or something like that? I don't know. I didn't even know that was going on because I had my earphones on. Thank God, because I probably would have lost the game if I was distracted by that. And then people's cell phone. I know you run a tight ship as far as like put your phone on silent. You always tell if someone's cell phone goes on and stuff like that. That would distract me. You know what I mean? So you have that rules in place for people like me that it would really irk me if I was hearing someone's phone ringing or having these like loud conversations, and it basically tunes them out. It's a noise cancellation device.
Yeah, I tell everyone, spectators also, if you're a player or a spectator, they have to be on silent or vibrate. The reason I allow phones, because some people may say, why do you allow phones? Because we have families and lives, and we have people who may need to get in touch with us. So that's a little too draconian and unrealistic for me to say to turn them off, because what if someone needs to reach you? So I get that, and I'm not too worried about cheating or anything like that, because if something like that happened, I think it would be so like grossly overt and obvious if someone were doing that.
Yeah, and I appreciate your keeping the relaxed atmosphere regardless, because I drive about an hour to come to your club, and I have my family and kids at home, and if they need to reach, if there's an emergency, I'd like to know about it. You know what I mean? So, I mean, I keep my phone on the table. It's on silent. I'm leaving it there, but it's good that you have that relaxed atmosphere, and we're all friends.
I was going to say it's as competitive as it is. It's everyone's cool, and that whole social aspect of it. This is what you don't get from playing online. You know, you just don't get that kind of that live interaction. Yeah, but I do allow phones for that reason, because people have families. I mean, I have lawyers. I have doctors, I have real estate agents, I have people who need to stay connected for their job, right? You know, Dan Levin, who was on here a few episodes ago, he's an attorney. You know, if a client has to call him with it, he needs to be, I get that, right? I get that. And then the other thing is, as far as headphones, I know some of the major events don't allow that, but that's the beauty of the smaller clubs, is that it's just not, it doesn't have to be, but I get it at the major tournaments because the prize funds are so big. There's more of a risk that, there might be some issues. So I get it. It's all context. There are certain things that they have to put in place, and I get it because of the circumstances that they're dealing with. So I have a couple of more questions before we wrap it up. This has been great stuff, and I'm having a ball here. I want to ask you about what you feel you need to work on the most. Like for me, the two things I need to work on the most, I need to, and you mentioned this earlier, I definitely need to add some spice to my opening repertoire. And that's something, when I had FM Karsten Hansen on here, he was telling me about that.
Yeah, I heard that episode, I think. Yeah, that was a good episode.
I need to spice up my opening repertoire. And the other thing that is definitely a weakness would be what I call more advanced tactics. Like I'm good tactically as far as like not hanging things and like basic 2-move combinations, both of offense and defense, noticing that. But a lot of times I'm not good at spotting those more advanced tactics where it's maybe a 4 or 5 move sequence that could win the game or give me an advantage, or my opponent has it. That's those sort of intermediate or advanced tactical patterns, and kind of seeing that as part of the analysis, I'll miss things. That's something for me that I definitely need to work on. So I'm curious if there's one or more things that you feel you need to level up in your game?
Pretty much every area of my game, I feel like I need to level up at. I would say that my strength and I'll just go by what I was told. I actually took a couple of lessons with Alex Lenderman.
Okay.
Grandmaster Alex Lenderman. I was talking with him at one tournament, and he's very, very nice guy. He was actually talking with my kids at one point. He sat with us. So I took a few lessons with Alex Lenderman. He had mentioned that that my strength was that the coming up with plans, sort of like plans of action. Like for example, you always hear it's better to have you always hear people say it's better to have like a plan than no plan at all. Like I feel like I have no trouble coming up with a plan in chess. It might be the wrong plan, but I'm always devising like a plan of action. So I think that's my strength. My weakness is probably calculation. So maybe not as much tactics, but calculation. I feel that many times, like if a tactic is presented to me and someone says, "Find the tactic," I feel like I'm pretty good at finding a tactic. But if it's just whether a tactic works or not, and it's not a tactics problem, it's a real game. Is it a valid tactic, right? Sometimes I have just trouble distinguishing if it. I mean, people might argue, like Tal always said, you're playing the man, not the machine, kind of thing, where it might work, but I always like to try to play the best move. So I guess like calculation and maybe even a calculation with just a simple exchange. What kind of position is my piece is going to be in afterwards? So I would say I work on calculation, and then I used to get in a lot of time trouble. And I think the time trouble and Grandmaster Alex Lenderman had told me comes with practice, and he kind of was right, because at that point I was like earlier in my like adult tournament career, so to speak, that the more games that I played, the more the less nervous I would get, and the more I was able to devote towards concentrating on the game and being less distracted, like making stupid blunders or things like that. So I think that maybe like a combination of being less distracted and then also time pressure. Time pressure I improved a little bit just with playing, and so I would say that's probably my biggest strengths. So if you want to beat me in chess, you probably want to distract me in some way and get me under time pressure. And I play like a monkey. I really do. If there's 2 minutes on the clock, I feel like I play at like a 200 level player strength. Like I just can't think that fast.
I was going to say I'm the same way. It's amazing. It's like I could be playing 1800 strength the whole game. And then even with the delay, if I'm in really, really bad time pressure, it's like somebody flipped a switch and I'm a beginner.
And some people are really good at it, and it has nothing to do with age or anything. Some people just are able to think methodically, really quick. I almost look at it as like thinking like an accountant, where it's like you're seeing the numbers, you're seeing it right in front of your face. You don't really care why. Deep down, you just see it. You know what I mean? And it's almost like I can't think that fast.
You know what I'm in awe of? I mean, it's almost annoying. Like, when someone's so good at something, part of you is like, wow. And then part of you is like, oh, like that is just so annoying. Like it almost drives you crazy how good they are at it.
Right.
It's the guys who
right.
they have like 6 seconds left. There's a delay, but even still, they have 6 seconds left and they're just playing calmly as if they're not in time pressure. Like within 3 seconds,
right.
Okay, but hit the clock. And they're right there in the game. They're playing perfectly accurate moves, whereas most of us with 6 seconds, there would be tension. We're moving quickly. Do you hate those guys? No, but I mean, we have a few of them at the club, part of me is like, wow, like I'm in awe of that. And part of me is like, are you kidding me? Like, how are you playing so accurately in this wild, tactical, complicated position? and you have 6 seconds left. And that's just, it's, it's crazy to look at. Now, let me ask you one last question. We were joking the other night about like knight takes F7, like a knight sack, like all these different piece sacks. Cause I had a game the other night, which I won. I played my French, but he played a very wild, no, I shouldn't say wild, but he played an off book, different from the mainline variation is white. And it did kind of throw me off a little bit, you know, credit to him. And that's what you want. And at one point, it turns out that he had knight takes F7, like a knight sack. And according to the computer, he's up like 3.65. Now, I'm glad that I saw it. See, if I didn't even consider it, I saw knight takes F7 that he had it. So did he. We were talking after the game. But both of us, our analysis was the same. Okay, if he plays that, knight takes F7, king takes knight, we didn't see a follow-up. There was no check. There was no mating, nothing obvious. It turns out after the king takes the knight, he then has this bishop. But it's like this 7, 8, 9 move sequence. And so we were talking to Tim about it at the club after, you know, Tim's a master. And he's like, yeah, who's that? Apparently some grandmaster said, never play knight takes F7. It never works, right? And the thing is, even though that was the correct move, if you don't know the follow-up, see, that's the thing with with sacking a piece and attacking. If you play the correct first move, it usually requires like then 5, 6, 7 extremely precise moves. Otherwise, you're down a piece for nothing.
Right.
My question to you is, do you play like true sacrifices? Like for me, and this has kept me in good stead, I will only sack a piece if it's not like what they call a true sacrifice, if it's more of a combination. Like if I see the line all the way through, if I see it's going to lead to mate, if I see it's going to win a pawn, if I, you know what I'm saying? If I see it all the way through, like I can see what it's going to look like when everything comes out in a wash, then I'll play it. But if it's unclear, even though a lot of guys will, I won't play it because it just gets me into trouble. The only time I might do that is if my flag is about to fall or something. Do you play those speculative sacrifices, or do you need to see it straight through?
I do play them as long as I could see it through. And when I say see it through, I think I see it through. As a matter of fact, the last game that I lost, I gave up. I did a sacrifice, a knight sacrifice on pretty much the equivalent of F7. And then what happened was what I thought I saw through was actually incorrect. I wound up losing the game, but it was a correct sacrifice. It just had it took a different road. It was kind of like you could have all these infinite possibilities. It was like an 8 move sequence afterwards. One little move off the branch of the tree and you're done. And that's what pretty much happened. It was just, and that's what I mentioned before, my inability to calculate and follow through like 8 to 10 moves into it is what lost me the game. But it was a sound. It almost goes down to a lot of people have really good chess intuition. I think I have good intuition. I was able to spot it, and even after the game, they're like, why did you? They said, why did you sacrifice? They're like, that was no good. I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, I thought it was good, but when I checked the computer, it was a correct sacrifice. It was in the computer number 1 move. But I just didn't choose the right path. I see myself doing that a lot sometimes, where I find the right move. It's just a matter of finding the right path. That's the difficult part.
Right. And a lot of it depends on your opponent. Like for me to play a speculative sacrifice where I'm not sure if it's correct, if I know my opponent is going to get freaked out, because, you know, some players, like you sack a piece by their king, it like totally freaks them out because their thought process is, oh, geez, that must be winning. Right. And then and you'll win the game just because they fall apart psychologically. Against a player like that, I might try it. But unless I see it, the frustration for me is that I know that every move that follows it has to be correct. Otherwise, you're then down a piece for nothing.
Right. Oh, I thought it was correct. It's just you miss like 1 square and you're done.
That's it. You miss like one slight thing. I mean, I give you credit for playing it. And when you do play it, when you do play a sacrifice where you don't see it through and you win, it's like the greatest feeling ever.
Yeah, I only do that during like fun games, playing with friends or something. In a tournament game, I would never do a sacrifice unless I didn't see it all the way through. Now, the question is, did my determination that it was correct or not, was it really correct? That's the issue.
Well, that's what I'm saying. And I was asking in the context of like, a slower time control in a USCF rated
Right.
time. If I'm playing a blitz game on chess.com, yeah, I'll do it and my opponent will do it. But because that's one of the things we were saying after the game, because he told me, he goes, if we were playing online, he goes, I would have played knight takes F7. We tend to be more conservative when we know our regular rating is at stake. So yeah, interesting stuff. Cool. All right. So Stefan, I'm going to let you go here. This was a fascinating discussion. I really appreciate your point of view.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Chessable. Their courses are awesome. I'll put a link in the description, chessable.com. I'll also put a link for some of my favorite courses. But Stefan Wefer, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. This was a great discussion. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right. Have a good day, everybody. We really appreciate it. And as always, I hope you win your next game.